You getting your mask okay? Okay. This is Susan Bassi. This is the second week of the lockdown in California based on the global pandemic. And I thought I'd take you on a direct audit and show you exactly what's going on in Los Gatos, California. Because I've been hearing from the nurses, the doctors, and I've been paying attention to your emails, your text messages, and your social media posts. And this morning, I got this email from the Public Information Officer from the Santa Clara County Family Courts. That's from Ben Rada. Ben Rada is paid over $118,000 a year to provide information to the public. And when I asked him how the public would be able to get court files if only litigants with scheduled hearings were able to go to the courthouse, he didn't respond. So I decided to go down to the courthouse myself and find out what people are supposed to do to access their public court files during this time. And I ran into a police officer who's a technician for the Santa Clara County Sheriff's Department who manages security in the courthouse. He wasn't very helpful, but he's had a chip on for the last 3 years because he's part of a group of sheriffs who was present when they broke my hand. Hi. Deputy, I'm looking for information about how people access court files, and the PIO hasn't answered my questions yet today. Can you tell me how people are supposed to access their public court files? Is there someone available to talk to me about that? Now keep in mind, this is a family courthouse in the heart of Silicon Valley that cost taxpayers $283 million to build. Less than 4 years later, after the courthouse was opened with its sparkly imported marble, the front doors are boarded up because somebody threw a rock through the glass. The papers on the outside of the glass appear more like a college dormitory posting. The notices are all printed in English. And these two police officers standing inside, arguably to give information to the public, demonstrate exactly what it means when no one appears to be in charge and police officers don't understand the laws and the rules themselves. Because one police officer is wearing a mask where he clearly is attempting to protect himself and others, and the other police officer is standing less than 6 feet away from the woman that he is speaking to, and he is not wearing a mask. And so if we are to take this seriously and follow the rules, we have to be able to expect that the police officers in charge of enforcing the rules know them and follow them themselves. Officer, I'm trying to get some information about how people can access their court files. Do you have any information on that? I understand. They sent a press release out today saying that cases were closed. You couldn't come in the courthouse unless you had a scheduled court hearing.
Correct.
Do you know how we get court files, public court files? Have you been instructed on that?
We haven't been instructed on that because that is not our function. Our function is courthouse security.
Okay, and so you're just instructed no one comes in unless they have a scheduled hearing, is that correct?
To prevent the spread of the coronavirus.
Okay, thank you, officer. Appreciate your service. So if police officers can't figure out what to do with their masks and how to manage the public, let's just imagine what the hospitals in Silicon Valley are doing. And that is what took me to Good Samaritan Hospital in Los Gatos, California, where several of my sources were indicating that they were having trouble getting a clear direction from hospital administrators. It's closed.
No, I work here.
Oh,
Yeah.
I was actually, I'm out filming the impact of the pandemic, and I was interested that you guys are closed, but that Baskin Robbins was open right down the way.
Yeah, we're closed. It's just, we're waiting for a package of gloves and masks, actually. It's supposed to be here today. So, yeah, just waiting for it to get here, hopefully. We got the update that it's supposed to be here today. It's supposed to be here Wednesday.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Thank
So we'll
you.
see. Good luck.
And by evening, I had received an email from the county supervisors telling me how they were going to be spending a lot of money on nonprofits they are already spending money with and with the local district attorney, whose judgment has been less than exemplary during the years before there was a virus outbreak. And I couldn't help but wonder if we aren't just whistling through the graveyard, meaning attempting to be cheerful in what is actually a dire situation. And from a distance, I ran into this couple and I asked them from my car about their baby because she was clearly pregnant, and I asked her when she was expecting. She said she was expecting in April, and they had been advised that they might need a doula to deliver their baby at home. And this is Silicon Valley, with all the wealth, power, money, and information at their fingertips. And yet our elected officials and those in power and supposedly in charge seem to have no idea what's going on. And that reminded me of my own OBGYN, Dr. Troba, who happened to be the OBGYN for several of my sources. And right before Dr. Troba died, earlier this year, I did an interview with him about one of his patients, Elena Berg, who had forged some documents to become artificially inseminated in order to get an advantage in a divorce case.
You know, it was, I learned something. You can't trust patients.
No, you can't.
You know, in good faith, you know, and her husband never came in with her because, you know, he was much older and, you know, kind of, I don't know what all of the things are. But anyway, she never brought him in, but she had a pretty good story and signed his name.
And Dr. Troa told me that one of the greatest regrets over his 50-year career was taking on Elena Berg as a patient, where he helped her become a mother through artificial insemination after she forged documents claiming that she had her husband's permission. We now know that Elena did that only to get a litigation advantage during a divorce case.
What we're finding is there's a pattern of domestic violence that people don't talk about with their doctors, their friends, or anything. And I actually have read the whole file on Elena and the email. She had a prior DV, and there's a police report about that, but that never got brought up. And she also was seen at Kaiser. She was 5150 twice. You know, I mean, that's where they put you in for a mental health check. It's involuntarily they commit you.
And it was shocking to me that a doctor who had been practicing medicine for over 50 years and who did in vitro fertilization didn't know much about domestic violence or about being 5150'd, because Elena Berg had been 5150'd at Good Samaritan Hospital, where Dr. Trabeau had worked. And it would be later that Dr. Trabeau would learn that Elena had committed forgery, perjury, and filed false documents in the court, including the agreement that she presented to Dr. Trabeau as being her husband's written consent for the artificial insemination. And in the same year that Elena Berg falsely claimed that she had been a victim of domestic violence in order to get an advantage in her family law case, the woman that lived on this street in Los Gatos was walking to work at La Rinconada golf course and being repeatedly raped in her garage at night. She too was an immigrant, but she wasn't blonde. She was Filipino. And apparently Jeff Rosen, the Santa Clara County District Attorney, doesn't believe in protecting people who are from the Philippines the same way he protected people from Sweden. Because when Elena Berg's case was brought to Jeff Rosen's attention, he declined to prosecute her. And by 2015, the Santa Clara County District Attorney, including Jeff Rosen and Miss Harmon with the Sexual Assault Unit, had evidence before them about Elena's perjury, forgery, and other crimes that she committed in her divorce case. But apparently, it isn't just the crimes you commit or whether you're an immigrant from Sweden. It's the divorce attorneys that you choose to represent you in these cases who perpetuate your lies. Because Elena Burke wasn't just represented by attorney Bradford Baugh, who was awarded $250,000 in attorney's fees because of Elena's lies. She was also represented by Jason Pintar, an attorney whose office is on the Alameda, not far from Santa Clara University. And we are investigating Mr. Pintar's cases because there is a strong connection to human trafficking and sex trafficking involving our family court cases. And this is what it looked like on the streets of Los Gatos today, 2 weeks into California's lockdown. Most of the restaurants are closed, some have some signs out, and some will do pickup with Uber Eats or other takeout. But I couldn't help but notice the Los Gatos Apple store that was sealed up tight, because this is not what that store looked like 2 weeks earlier. And I also happened to notice these two police officers walking down the street in Los Gatos.
Fire or police? Sorry? Are you fire or police? Oh. And are you checking on businesses to see if they're closed? Oh, you're Chief Senna, aren't you? I am. My name's Susan Bassi. I'm going to be making an appointment to talk to you. We can talk on the phone.
Peter DeSena, and I'm the Chief of Police at the Los Gatos Montesreno Police Department. We are sharing this community briefing to provide information about an incident that occurred.
And this community briefing was only given by the chief because the officer involved was Officer Silva, who had been involved in an excessive force case on the San Jose University campus just months earlier.
Los Gatos 911, what's the address of your emergency? Okay, what unit number?
I'm in, but my next door neighbor is walking around in front of my door right now, screaming for me to go fuck myself, for me to get out of the complex. I'm a bitch. He's a hoarder, and I complained to our, oh my God, he's screaming. He's right in front of my door.
Okay, hold on one second.
And while the fear of this woman inside her home was clearly obvious, the police sent Officer Silva, who I've covered in videos on this channel before. He was known to have been involved in an excessive force case on the San Jose State University campus, and yet he was hired by the Los Gatos Police Department nonetheless. And so, in this incident, there was another excessive force use, and it was captured on video. And I doubt that many of those in the First Amendment auditing community would agree with the police department that it was an appropriate use of excessive force. And because good investigative reporters know when it's time to talk to the chief of police, we are ready. Even though California is on lockdown and we're practicing social distancing, we've done our homework. We've gained our sources, our public records, and now we're ready to talk to the chief of police. We're going to be talking about an accident on Blossom Hill Road and how it could be that the woman who killed a 66-year-old man has not been prosecuted, and her connection to Judge Towery. We're going to talk about a police officer in 2012 who got it wrong, and that case was also in front of Judge James Towery in the local family courts. And then we're going to talk about the history of all the cases with the Los Gatos Police Department, and maybe they shouldn't be making calls on mental health issues, especially during a global epidemic, because this was the Apple store just before we went on lockdown.
It's a little interesting. I wasn't aware private security could put gloves on and go hands-on on somebody. Do you guys have contracts to do that?
You right now.
We were on assignment and we heard you having an altercation, and we're just wondering what's going on. This guy's private security, and he's putting on gloves, and that's interesting to me.
You can't go hands-on. Just so you know. We're trying to protect your interests. If they're doing something illegal towards your rights, we want to make sure we capture it for you. Okay, so do you mind sharing what they're doing that may be violating your rights?
I'm just curious, sir. I saw you putting gloves on, and I was just wondering what that's about. Do you have authority to go hands-on? He's on a public sidewalk.
Family members.
Whatever this is all about, I'm just trying to.
Here's what okay. So here's what we're going to go on. You remember Great Bear?
And just 4 days before Santa Clara County was put on lockdown, we watched 3 private security guards from Apple and 3 police officers make a determination on a public sidewalk that this man required hospitalization for a psychiatric evaluation. And we have to wonder what kind of training police officers could possibly have to make that determination when a doctor practicing medicine for over 50 years and impregnating a Swedish immigrant with artificial insemination wasn't able to determine that when he had her medical records and he worked for the very same hospital where she had been committed. And you can bet when I interview Police Chief Senna about the Los Gatos Police Department, we're going to talk about this 2012 police report and how his officers could have gotten it so wrong that they wouldn't have even bothered to look in the garage where a Filipino woman was being trafficked, having her money taken, and being raped repeatedly in her garage. And as I headed home, I decided to take a detour through the campus of Netflix, which is headquartered in Los Gatos, California. And I was pleased to see that Netflix was complying with the stay-in-place orders and they had sent all of their employees home. The campus was virtually empty. But I was mindful of the fact that as Netflix had grown to such huge success in Los Gatos, that local reporting had evaporated. And without local reporters, we're unable to talk about whether or not nurses are getting their masks or being bullied by hospital administrators into silence. We're unable to talk about law enforcement agencies, and we're unable to provide the transparency and accountability that all local governments need. And we're going to continue to do our work with the help and support of all of you here on this channel, because it's important to find out, epidemic or no, why Elena Berg was believed by the Santa Clara County District Attorney, and why she was also believed by a Los Gatos doctor with 50 years of medical experience, while a Filipino woman who was brought here by a member of the Mormon Church was not believed when she reported being raped a few blocks from this Netflix campus.